What's up? Today we're going to go over the bishop's opening, which happens after the second move bishop to c4, a slightly unusual move which makes a lot of sense. You're developing a piece, targeting the f7 weakness, which helps you often to develop strong attack early in the game. And now with these examples, I'll show you exactly how you can do this. In the first game, which is the game between Ponciani versus an unknown player, white played pawn to d4, pretty sharp attacking move, which is good to play, and black captured the pawn, and instead of capturing with a queen, which is inferior compared to other options, as in this case, black can gain tempo by playing knight to c6, hitting the queen. Therefore, instead of recapturing the pawn, white pushed the pawn forward, e5, taking the knight, and black realized that this knight does not have too many squares to go to, and so instead of making the knight move somewhere, they decided to play queen to e7, taking advantage of the pin, and this way solving the problem. But nevertheless, white played queen to e2, renewing the threat, and ultimately the black's knight had to go backwards, all the way back to g8. Now white played knight to f3. This time he's going to capture this pawn with the knight, and therefore black decided to protect it by playing pawn to c5, white castled, black played knight to c6, natural development move, and at this point white set a clever trap. He played bishop g5, and at first, of course, black has the only response to save the queen, which is pawn to f6. And in this case, after white captured the pawn, black happily took the queen on e2, hoping to exchange queens, go into an endgame where he's got this extra pawn on d4. And indeed, if white were to capture the queen, then black is probably winning here, just because of his strong center material advantage. But instead of all that, white just played pawn to f7, little move which checkmates black's king quite funnily. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that in the final position you can see that bishop c4 plays the key role, and that is how playing the bishop's opening can help you sometimes to attack that key square f7, and throughout this entire game black suffered because of this pressure. Alright, let's go over the second game between Richardson against Delmar. White still played the bishop's opening, knight played to f6, and white goes knight f3. It's actually one of the ways for white to play here, and in this video I'm more focusing on the general checkmating patterns and taking ideas in the bishop's opening. If you're wondering about the specific moves that you should be playing in this opening, then I recorded a video about that already, and you can click the link below in the description, or at the end of the video you'll see it on the screen, and watch my video, The Unbeatable Bishop's Opening, where I go over different lines and I recommend you specifically how to play there. It's a really instructive video, and I do recommend that you play it if you plan to play this position either as white or as black. Alright, in this case black played knight takes c4, and white continued with knight to c3, which is a pretty interesting way actually, because in this case, yes, you sacrificed a pawn, but if black is willing to just trade the knights, then his position is somewhat dangerous. In the game, he didn't play that move, the most natural move, but just so that you're aware, let me take a second to say that in case black captures the knight, which is the most usual move, then you recapture, and you can already see that white is so much ahead in development, and he's got so many more open lines and diagonals under his control. For example, if black protects the pawn on e5 by playing pawn on d6, then after knight g5, black is already in trouble because of the double threat to the f7 square, which black cannot counter. This is just to show you that this line can be really dangerous for black. Anyway, let's take a move back. In this game which we're analyzing, black decided not to go into this line. He wanted to be aggressive himself, and so instead of letting white to be an attacker, he decided to sacrifice the knight on f2, which in this case gives him 2 pawns plus some chances to attack the white's exposed king. And in this case, yes, black has two central pawns for the sacrificed knight, and also white's king is currently attacked. White played pawn on d4 to cover the diagonal, black recaptured, and black was probably hoping for white to take this pawn on d4, and in this case he prepared the move queen to f6 with an attack to the white's king as well as the knight, and in this case white is indeed in trouble. Black is in fact probably just winning here. That's probably what black was hoping for, but white was prudent enough to notice the threat, and therefore he didn't take the pawn here. Let's take a move back, and instead of that he played a counter-attacking move, rook to e1 check. black moved his king to f8, and even in this position, instead of recapturing the pawn on d4, white played the move knight to e4, which is an attacking move. And as you can see, it's a common motif in different variations. If you're playing in a Gambit attacking style, you normally want to keep punching, keep attacking as often as you can so that your opponent does not have any free time to consolidate his position. Black played bishop to b6. And in this case, white played a fairly tricky move, but it's a really hidden trap, and therefore we gotta give credit to the white player. He played queen d3, and at first it looks like maybe he was just scared for the black's discover check. If black can push the pawn forward, that would enable the bishop to attack the king. So black player probably thought that white was just scared about this threat and he tried to block the pawn, but doing that he played a mistaken move, because now black can play pawn on d5. And it looks like black is just winning here, or at least he's gonna capture one of the white's minor pieces on the next move, and yeah, looks like white is done. But white prepared a super cool combination. He played queen a3 check, the king goes to g8, and now he captures the pawn, sacrificing the bishop, which looks like just a desperate thing because white couldn't save both of his pieces, so he decided to at least take the pawn. Black happily grabbed the bishop, and in this case, it was the time for white to unleash his threat. Knight f6 check, followed by queen f8, another beautiful sacrifice, which enables the white's bishop on the next move to involve into the attack by playing bishop h6, followed by rook to e8, checkmate. Really cool game played by white player, and yeah, it's just one of the super beautiful examples of the bishop's opening playing as white. The next game is between Horowitz against an unknown opponent. White still goes for the bishop's opening, black goes knight f6, pawn to d4, one of the lines we analyzed already, and after that we go knight to f3, looking for quick development, and so white is ready to sacrifice this pawn on e4, even though in this game black didn't take it, he played bishop b4 instead. And white keeps playing in the Gambit style. He doesn't want to just cover his king and trade off the pieces. He wants to play for quick development. And so he plays pawn to c3, and after black takes it, white just castles. Black decided to put his king into safety as well, and now white kicks off his attack by playing pawn to e5. As you can see, it's a common motif in a lot of these lines. White starts the attack by playing pawn to e5, which is the first signal. It's the first white's piece going into the black's territory, and it may be the first signal of the beginning of the white's attack. Black played knight e4, white played bishop d5, chasing this knight await, and after that he finally captured the pawn back on c3, but in this case he's also attacking the bishop, so it has to go back. And at this point, white noticed an interesting thing, that all of the black's minor pieces are concentrated on the queen side, right? On the left side of the board, if we're looking from the white's perspective. And therefore, his king is somewhat lonely on the king side, which gave white an opportunity to rush for a decisive attack. He played knight g5, putting some pressure onto black's position. Black tried knight e6, which looks good, looks like it solidifies the black's position and tries to trade off this knight, but white played queen h5, threatening checkmate in 1, queen takes h7, therefore black traded off the knights here, and now the queen is attacked, therefore queen e8 is forced, and now white finishes the game beautifully by playing bishop to f6, which, puts the black's king somewhat in the cage. It blockades the position, and therefore none of the black's pieces or pawns can move forward and somewhat save the king. The idea is that in case black captures the bishop here, white can continue with bishop to e4, and on the next move he will play queen takes h7 checkmate. Therefore, that is clearly winning, and that is why in the game, let's take a move back. Instead of taking the white's bishop, black played pawn to h6, but it didn't help because white found another beautiful way to finish the game, queen to g6. It's a pretty interesting position how harmonious the white's pieces are and how all of them come together to checkmate the black's king, and because queen takes g7 is unavoidable, black resigned. Oh, right. And in the next example here was played with a similar first move. White still played knight to f3 to sacrifice the pawn, and after that played knight c3. In this case, black played the expected move, trading the knights, and then he played pawn to d6. As I've shown you previously, it's actually a mistake which allows white to go knight g5 with a deadly attack against the f7 square. However, in this game, white missed this opportunity and he instead just castled, which is okay, but definitely not as strong, which is compared to knight g5, which was winning immediately. At this point, black probably noticed the threat and he played bishop g4 so that the knight cannot move anymore and white can't execute the knight g5 idea. And in this case, I want to ask you to think about this position and to let me know in the comments down below how would you play here as white. It is obvious the white to play. Think about this and write your idea in the comments down below. Also guys, I'm not sure if you want more videos about the bishop's opening, and if you like it, then you can vote for the subject, and if this video gets 1000 likes, I will record a continuation about the bishop's opening and we'll cover some other interesting lines and traps that you can use here as white. Wishing you best of luck in your chess battles, and see you soon.